You know Russell Westbrook don't have the temperament to put up with that. Come on, y'all. That ain't who he is.
Stephen A. Smith came out swinging, and this time his target was none other than Russell Westbrook, a former MVP now left stranded in free agency. The way Stephen A. clowned him wasn't just harsh, fans are calling it straight up brutal. But behind the savage jokes, there's a deeper truth about why Westbrook is still unsigned, and the reality might be uglier than anyone in the league wants to admit. Let's be real, the mockery echoed all across the NBA. Russell Westbrook, once the walking triple-double, the explosive spark plug that never seemed to run out of energy, is sitting in basketball limbo. The man who once owned highlight reels with pure force of will is, in 2025, jobless in NBA terms. And when it came time to weigh in, Stephen A. didn't show an ounce of pity. He didn't sugarcoat. He went raw with a public takedown so bold that it instantly lit up headlines and split fan bases wide open. This isn't just about one star fading away. This is about what happens when an NBA icon refuses to adjust, and the league he once defined decides to move on without him. And make no mistake, when Stephen A. Smith takes his gloves off, it tells us just as much about the cold machine of the NBA as it does about Westbrook himself. Now here's where it got wild. Stephen A. threw out the word inexcusable. That's not something you toss around on national TV for a former MVP, unless you want smoke.
Inexcusable behavior, that's what I saw. And I don't know why this isn't being talked about enough, to be quite honest with you.
He didn't stop there either. He flat out said Westbrook deserved a suspension after one of his reckless playoff meltdowns, calling it both appalling and inexcusable. And here's the chilling part. For years, analysts and fans whispered that Russ was holding teams back, that his bulldozing style didn't fit the modern NBA anymore. But Stephen A. wasn't whispering. He was blasting it on the biggest sports platform in America. Then he dropped a prediction that sent shivers across the league. If Westbrook couldn't accept a lesser role, he might end up without a team at all. Imagine that. From MVP to forgotten free agent. From top 10 highlights to a player nobody wants to gamble on. So how did it get this bad? How did Russell Westbrook, the same guy who averaged a triple-double across 3 straight seasons, the same guy who forced his way into the Hall of Fame conversation with nothing but relentless energy, end up on the wrong side of Sinead's wrath? To answer that, we have to rewind the tape. Russ wasn't even supposed to be here in the first place. This was the kid who nearly went to Stanford for academics. Basketball was supposed to be plan B, but once he hit the hardwood, he turned it into personal warfare. That fire drove him to the top.
My parents always told me, you need to get a good education. And I was actually thinking about going to Stanford just for academics out of high school.
But now, it might just be the same fire burning down the rest of his career. Teammates, rivals, even legends of the game once praised Russell Westbrook like he was unstoppable. James Harden himself said Westbrook's MVP season might have been the greatest single-season performance we've ever seen in NBA history. Other legends compared his fire to Jordan's killer instinct and his relentlessness to Kobe's obsession. But here's the cold twist. The same fearless style that made Russ legendary has become the very weapon used against him. Teams literally stopped guarding him. Defenses dared him to shoot like it was a running joke. Colin Cowherd even called him the least guarded guard in the league. Imagine that, a former MVP treated like a scrub role player no one respects. That's humiliation at the highest level, basketball's version of Exile. And Stephen A. knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't just point out Russ's struggles, he mocked him for refusing to evolve.
Russell Westbrook can't change. He's not going to be a good defender. He hasn't been the last 14 years, and that's not changing.
This wasn't about a missed shot or a bad night. It was about exposing the NBA's deadliest flaw, stubbornness. Back in his prime, Russ's freakish athleticism covered it all up. But now, every turnover, every wild jump pass, every risky gamble looks 10 times worse. Critics had their knives out, and they weren't just cutting into his game, they went for his name, his pride, his family. The Westbrook chants got so ugly that Russ's own family stopped showing up to games.
Honestly, I was, me and my wife was at teacher-parent conference for my son. And the teacher told me, she's like, Noah, he's so proud of his last name. He writes it everywhere. He writes it on everything. He tells everybody, he walks around and says, I'm Westbrook, that's his last name. And I kind of sat there in shock, and it hit me like, damn, like, I can no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming, like it's shaming my name, it's my legacy for my kids.
That's not heckling, that's psychological warfare. And when Russ finally admitted how much it hurt him, the world saw the human side of his downfall. Now imagine sitting at home carrying all of that and turning on ESPN just to hear Stephen A saying you might not even have a job next season. That's not commentary. That's a public execution, and the wild part, it worked, because here we are still talking about it. But then came the bombshell nobody saw coming. Stephen A didn't just torch Russ, he called out LeBron James. That's right, the same LeBron who vouched for Russ to join the Lakers. Stephen A claimed LeBron helped fuel the cynicism around Westbrook, even pointing back to the Houston playoff series when LeBron's Lakers mocked him behind the scenes as a liability.
LeBron is guilty of that. Remember when Russell Westbrook was in Houston and they were in the playoffs against the Lakers? And LeBron James and the Lakers was talking about he with us when he had the ball?
That's betrayal at the highest level, the king himself allegedly laughing at a teammate he publicly supported. And when things went south, LeBron let rumors fly all offseason about swapping Russ for Kyrie Irving. So the real question is bigger than Russ. Did the NBA machine set him up, from the fans to the analysts to the stars themselves? Was he built up as a hero just to be ripped apart later for entertainment? Because the image of a former MVP who gave everything to the game, getting clowned on national TV and mocked by his own peers, that's not just downfall, that's tragedy. What makes it worse is the irony. Russ was never supposed to be the golden boy. He wasn't LeBron with hype since high school. He wasn't crowned the next Jordan. He wasn't handed the keys to a franchise at draft night. He was raw, undersized for a shooting guard, and way too reckless for a point guard. But he had something no one could measure: unshakable belief. That belief turned into his brand, the thing that carried him from UCLA confusion to an NBA Hall of Fame resume. 4 seasons averaging a triple-double. Think about that. Legends like Oscar Robertson had to watch the impossible become reality. Russ didn't just play ball, he turned defiance into an art form. But here's the cruelest part. The same refusal to bend, the same stubbornness that made him great, is now what critics like Stephen A say is destroying him in real time. Magic Johnson once said it best: "You have to own your stuff." And that's where Russell Westbrook's story gets complicated. For all his fire and intensity, accountability was never his strongest weapon. The NBA in 2025 lives and dies by spacing, efficiency, and the three-point shot. And Stephen A. Smith tore right into that reality. Let's not sugarcoat it. Russ has never been a good shooter. That's not hating, that's facts carved in stone. And in today's game, where every missed jumper is tracked like evidence in a courtroom, Russ's inefficiency became unforgivable.
This is only about your game. You have not been a good shooter. And a person who has not been a good shooter.
Back in the day, he could blow past defenders and cover it up. But now, every bricked jumper feels like a turnover. Every empty possession like another nail in his legacy. But here's where the humiliation cuts even deeper. It's not just numbers, it's perception. When defenses literally back off you, waving you on to shoot, it echoes louder than any highlight dunk you ever made. Imagine being a future Hall of Famer and realizing defenders treat you like you're invisible. That's not strategy. That's exile on hardwood. And Russ felt it. His frustration boiled over in emotional press conferences. When the Westbrook chants got loud, he admitted it wasn't just about him anymore. It was hurting his family, even his kids.
I no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming, like it's shaming my name, it's my legacy for my kids.
Think about that. His children couldn't enjoy their dad's career without hearing strangers mock his name in the stands. That's not just basketball slander, that's pain carried home every night. But when Stephen A had the chance to ease up, to show sympathy, he didn't blink. He called Russ's antics appalling. He accused him of letting teammates down in the biggest moments, and he laughed off the idea that Russ could ever reinvent himself as a role player.
The problem with Russ on the defensive end is his mental mistakes. He doesn't pay attention off the ball. He gambles way too much. He goes for steals constantly.
For Stephen A, this wasn't hate. It was a cold obituary being written in real time. His brutal truth: the game had passed Russ by, and if he didn't adapt, he wouldn't just fade. he'd be erased. But not everybody agreed with that narrative. Legends who battled Russ, Tracy McGrady, Chauncey Billups, defended him as a once-in-a-generation competitor. Former teammates vouched for him as one of the best locker room guys they'd ever had. Some even compared his fire straight to Michael Jordan's insane competitiveness. So why the split? Why do players ride for Russ while analysts roast him alive? It's about perspective. Teammates see the grind, the blood, the insane work ethic. Analysts see the ugly box scores, the turnovers, the losses, and fans, they don't see the work, they see the memes. They hear Westbrook echo through arenas. They watch YouTube compilations of his worst plays looped endlessly until perception becomes reality. And that's where Stephen A's power comes in. Whether you agree or not, his platform shapes the narrative. When he says Russ might be out of a job, it's not just analysis, it's prophecy. And in the NBA, perception can bury you faster than your own stats ever could. But here's where it all gets explosive. Stephen A didn't just torch Russ, he dragged LeBron James into the fire. He accused LeBron of being part of the problem. Think about the betrayal. The same king who vouched for Russ to join the Lakers, who tweeted support when fans mocked him, was now being accused of quietly undermining him all along. And when the Kyrie Irving trade rumors hit the summer air, it felt like confirmation. Russ was disposable even to LeBron. So this is bigger than Westbrook's free agency drama. This is about NBA politics, about stars protecting their own legacy while sacrificing others, and about how the media spins flaws until a player looks unrecognizable. Russ isn't just battling missed shots. He's fighting a system that builds icons just to tear them down in front of the world. And this is what it all comes down to. What happens when a man who built his whole identity on Defiance suddenly has no one left to fight against? Here's the gut punch. Stephen A. Smith's prophecy came true. Russ is still a free agent. Teams have moved on. The game has evolved. And for all the fire, history, and blood he left on the hardwood, the league has basically told him, we're done with you. So when Stephen A. clowns him, it's not just jokes. It's the sound of the NBA shutting the door in his face. It's the league saying to one of its fiercest warriors, thanks for the memories, but we don't need you anymore. That's why this story matters. Russell Westbrook isn't just another player in decline. He's a cautionary tale for every star who thinks athleticism will never fade, for every icon who believes pure willpower can cheat time. Stephen A. didn't just roast Russ. He exposed the cruel truth of the NBA. Loyalty is fake. Greatness is temporary. And once the game decides you're finished, it doesn't matter who you were. You can be mocked, humiliated, and tossed aside like yesterday's news. Respect versus ridicule, that's the contradiction of the NBA. The humiliation of being unsigned isn't just about a missing contract, it's about symbolism. When a former MVP sits untouched in free agency, the message is deafening. You're no longer wanted, and that's what stings the most for Russ, because for more than a decade, he wasn't just wanted, he was needed. He was the spark, the motor, the storm that carried franchises on his back. OKC, Houston, Washington, even the Lakers. Every team rolled the dice on Westbrook, hoping he'd flip their season around. And sometimes he did. But now, with every day that passes, Westbrook's career looks less like a chapter waiting to be written, and more like a book closing in slow motion. Stephen A. knew this, then he weaponized it. On live TV, he didn't just critique Russ's game, he attacked his character. He used words like inexcusable.
Inexcusable behavior, that's what I saw. And I don't know why this isn't being talked about enough, to be quite honest with you.
Think about that. It wasn't about missed shots or blown assignments. It was about accountability. It was about Stephen A. standing on the biggest stage and saying, Russ crossed a line that effort alone can't defend. And when Stephen A. says that, it doesn't just stay on NBA Countdown. That narrative ripples everywhere, across debate shows, podcasts, YouTube clips, TikToks. Suddenly, it's not just one man's opinion, it's the official obituary of Westbrook's career being read out loud to millions. But here's the hypocrisy. While Stephen A. paints Russ as a liability, some of the game's most respected voices say the opposite. Teammates have called him one of the best leaders they ever had in the locker room. Young players tell stories of Russ pulling them aside, demanding they step into their greatness, giving speeches in practice that felt more like sermons than pep talks. But what goes viral? Not the mentorship, not the sacrifice, not the behind-the-scenes impact. No, what sells are the lowlights, the bricks, the turnovers, the awkward air balls that get clipped into endless TikToks. And the most heartbreaking part, Russ admitted it wasn't even him who hurt the most. It was his family. His wife, Nina, revealed the harassment they endured. And Russ himself broke down when he realized the Westbrook name his son wore with pride had been twisted into an insult shouted by strangers.
She's like, Noah, he's so proud of his last name. He writes it everywhere. He writes it on everything. He tells everybody, he walks around and says, I'm Westbrook, that's his last name. And I kind of sat there in shock, and it hit me like, damn, like I can no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming, like it's shaming my name, it's my legacy for my kids.
Imagine that. The thing that built his career becoming the same thing used to humiliate his family. That's not just decline. That's cruelty on full display. That's not sports banter anymore. That's humiliation bleeding into a man's family life. And if you thought Stephen A. Smith might tread lightly in that minefield, think again. He doubled down, flat out branding Westbrook as a man who refuses to evolve, a player who simply can't change.
Russell Westbrook can't change. He's not going to be a good defender. He hasn't been the last 14 years, and that's not changing.
This is where the takedown turns savage, because Stephen A. isn't just clowning Westbrook's current struggles. He's declaring his career finished. That's the dangerous power of narrative. Once someone like Stephen A. stamps that label on you, it spreads like wildfire. And to understand how devastating that is, you got to remember who Russ was. For years, Westbrook wasn't just a star. He was the star. James Harden once admitted Westbrook's MVP season might have been the greatest single-year performance the NBA had ever witnessed. Tracy McGrady said he'd never seen another player leave more of himself on the court every night. Even Damian Lillard called him the ultimate competitor, a man who played every game like it was his last. Even rivals who went head-to-head with him admitted it. Russ's relentless energy was contagious. Some called him the Energizer Bunny of the NBA. Others compared his fire straight to Jordan's killer mentality. But fast forward to today, those same traits, the stubbornness, the aggression, the refusal to bend, are now being sold as flaws. Coaches don't want to build systems around him. Defenses don't even respect him anymore. Colin Cowherd said it cold. Westbrook is the least guarded guard in the NBA. Teams literally beg him to shoot. For a former MVP, that's not just disrespect, that's humiliation you don't come back from. And it didn't stop at the arena. Online, the ridicule was worse. Memes of his bricks, Twitter threads dragging his triple-doubles as stat padding, missed dunks spreading faster than his highlights ever did. In today's NBA, perception is reality. And Westbrook was losing the war off the court as much as on it. And who was the loudest voice on that battlefield? Stephen A. Smith. When he called Russ's playoff behavior appalling, he wasn't just critiquing, he was cementing a label. When he said Russ couldn't change, it wasn't analysis, it was a career obituary written live on national TV. But here's the cruel twist. Fans loved it. Outrage sells, laughter trends, and nothing goes viral faster than watching a once great superstar get clowned into irrelevance. Meanwhile, Russ was left fighting for dignity, fighting not just for a roster spot, but for his family's respect, fighting against a nickname, Westbrook, that reduced a Hall of Fame resume to a punchline, fighting against a narrative so loud, even his greatness couldn't drown it out. And here's where the hypocrisy cuts deepest. While the media roasted him, his peers still vouched for him. Teammates like Bradley Beal swore by his leadership. Young players said he was a role model. Legends praised his heart. Inside the locker room, Westbrook was respected, but in the front offices, silence, no offers, no calls, nothing. So what does that tell you about today's NBA? It tells you that respect in the locker room doesn't guarantee survival, that you can give your entire body, your entire soul to the game, and once the narrative flips, the league will leave you stranded on the free agency list like you never mattered at all. And that's exactly why Stephen A. Smith's clowning cuts so deep, because whether he admits it or not, he's not just reporting on Westbrook's downfall, he's helping build it. His words carry weight. His takes echo in locker rooms, in boardrooms, and in front offices. When Stephen A says, Russ might not have a job, GMs hear it, fans repeat it, and suddenly it's not just an opinion, it becomes prophecy. So the real question is this: did Westbrook truly fail, or was he failed by a system that chews players up, turns them into memes, and discards them the moment they no longer fit the algorithm of modern basketball? Because let's be clear, this isn't only about Russ. It's a pattern. Stars get celebrated until they're inconvenient, then ridiculed until they're irrelevant. And now, Russell Westbrook, once the heartbeat of the NBA, has become its highest profile casualty. From MVP to meme, from unstoppable to unemployed, his fall is the coldest goodbye the league has ever given. And this isn't speculation, it's fact. Training camps are rolling, rosters are filling up, and Russ is still unsigned. The phone stays silent. The resume, the MVP award, the triple doubles, the historic records gets buried under TikToks of bricks and Twitter threads, mocking his decline. Stephen A saw this coming. He gave the world a brutal warning. If Russ couldn't accept a lesser role, he'd be out of the league entirely.
He can't prove this season that he could take a lesser role. What are they saying he's going to be next year, Stephen A? They saying he possibly could actually be without a job.
And then came the 4 words that hit harder than any stat line: without a job. Those words didn't just sting, they haunted him. And now, months later, they're reality. Yes, Stephen A clowned him, but buried under the mockery was a prophecy that feels almost scripted. And here's the darkest twist: the NBA doesn't care. Respect from players doesn't matter. Loyalty to the game doesn't matter. A Hall of Fame resume doesn't matter. If you can't shoot threes, if you can't fit into today's system, you're disposable. Period. That's the story the media won't admit, but it's the one Russ is living out in real time. Because here's the irony: Russell Westbrook is not washed. He still has energy most 25-year-olds can't match. He still plays every possession like it's war. He still loves the game like it's his first day in the league. But in the cold math of today's NBA, none of that is enough. Colin Cowherd broke it down bluntly. Russ is the least guarded guard in the league. Defenses literally step back, daring him to shoot. And when defenses laugh at you, front offices laugh too. And yet, the hypocrisy is glaring. Ask the players and they'll tell you, Russ is one of the fiercest competitors of his generation. Damian Lillard swore he's never seen someone play harder every single night. Kobe Bryant himself once praised his fire. Even Patrick Beverley, a man who openly feuded with Russ for years, admitted he respected the relentlessness. But ask executives, silence. Ask coaches, shrugs. Ask Stephen A, more clowning. That gap between respect and rejection is where Westbrook's story turns tragic, because the message from the NBA is clear: we respect you as a man, but not as a player. We love your legacy, but not enough to give you a roster spot. Thanks for everything. Now go home. That's the silent message hanging over Russell Westbrook's career right now, and he knows it. That's why his words about his family hit so hard. This isn't just a free agency story. It's a man watching the game he loves turn his name into a curse his own kids have to carry. That's not decline, that's legacy turned into collateral damage. And through it all, Stephen A. Smith doesn't flinch. He says what no one else dares to say on TV: that Russ is too stubborn to change, that his athleticism has faded, that his decision-making is still a liability, and that his refusal to adapt has left him stranded on the outside. It's harsh, it's cruel, but in today's NBA, it's also true. Because the league rewards evolution. Look at LeBron James. He shifted from slasher to playmaker to three-point shooter and extended his reign for decades. Look at Vince Carter. He went from dunking over 7-footers to carving out years as a reliable role player. Even Carmelo Anthony, once left for dead, clawed his way back into the league by accepting a bench role. But Westbrook, he never bent, he never compromised, and now he's paying the ultimate price. But here's the haunting part. Russ's story isn't just about Russ. It's about how the NBA chews up its aging stars. One moment, you're the face of the league. The next moment, you're a meme. One moment, you're MVP. The next, you're Westbrook. And Stephen A, he's just the megaphone blasting out what the league whispers behind closed doors. Once you're no longer useful, you're disposable. So where does that leave Russ? In limbo? In exile? Waiting for a phone call that may never come? watching his name trend, not for triple doubles or dunks, but for his failures. Fighting, not just for a contract, but for dignity. And maybe that's the cruelest irony of all, because Russell Westbrook built his whole career on defiance. He never backed down. He never changed for anyone. He never let anybody tell him who he was. But now, for the first time, the game itself is telling him, you're done. And no matter how hard he defies it, no matter how much he believes in himself, no matter how many legends still ride for him, the league has moved on. Stephen A. Smith may have clowned him for being a free agent, but let's be real. That wasn't just clowning. That was the obituary of his NBA career being read out loud for the world to hear. Unless something changes, unless Russ evolves in a way he never has before, his career won't end with a farewell tour, won't end with a standing ovation, won't end with respect. It'll end with ridicule. And that's the tragedy. Because for everything he gave the game, Russell Westbrook deserved better. But the NBA doesn't run on sentiment. It runs on survival. And in the survival game of today's league, Russ has been left behind. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment. And I'll see you on the next one.